look at it that you are building a business and build it right. I've seen that sometimes you keep changing because you want to keep the potential investor X happy to give you like, I don't know, $20 or $200,000. And you don't know that even if that happens or not. You build a company, the money comes, the traction comes, everyone comes after you. But if you chase the money, you cannot. And then don't chase the money. Let money work for you. You don't work for money.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. My name is Christian Peverelli, and this is Behind the Movement. I'm the co-founder of We Are No Code. We empower non-technical founders, and this entire channel is all around empowering the next generation of founders, entrepreneurs. And I have with me today a guest you will not even believe if I tell you everything that he has on his resume. He started off as a developer, so a coder, building products. He became an entrepreneur. Then he started advising companies. He jumped into becoming the managing director for Plug and Play here in Los Angeles, one of the biggest accelerators and venture capital investors in the United States. He then took over the media labs for Plug and Play and is now jumping back into entrepreneurship with his latest company, which is called PeachScore, which essentially is like the FICO score for startups. I want to welcome him, Alex. We've hung out so much. I appreciate for you jumping on the program and sharing all your insight. How are you doing today?
All is good, and thank you so much for having me here today. And so excited. I mean, to have a conversation with you more.
I'm more excited than you.
Entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and I think that everyone is going to realize very quickly the value that you bring to the table. So first of all, tell us a little bit more about what PeachScore is.
So, long story short, to keep it short, we call ourselves a FICO score for startups, for early stage companies. So if I give you a little bit history why we started this company, and if you go back all the way to 1950s, like before even credit score companies existed, you have to go, back then you had to go to bank and then sit in front of the lenders, and it took a very long process to make that happen, like maybe months. And the metrics back then was based on if they like you, and then put some support or document to show that you have money somewhere that in case you cannot pay for your loan. But everything changed after that. After the credit score companies came, everything changed, everything digitized, and everything kind of fully automated. And that's why now you can go, and if you want to sit and lease your car, it's going to take a few minutes for you to run your history. And then because thanks to automation and those kind of metrics, you're able to get a loan or lease your car or refinance very fast. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to digitize what is already manual in the industry. I know some people might say, oh, credit score companies the score doesn't represent me or is not fair, but this is what we got. I mean, this is what we got, the best thing in the market. And I think this still didn't happen for venture capital firms. And because, as an entrepreneur, and part of them I joined investors and seeing the both sides of the table, I've seen that there's long lines for entrepreneurs to even get meetings from investors, because in a lot of times, I mean, I've seen that based on my experience at Plug and Play, and then I asked the same question from other players in the market. Typically, they get like review maybe 30, 40, max 50% of the applications and requests, because there are tons of like innovations. Millions of new companies come to the market every year, and there are tens of thousands companies requesting for funds. I mean, based on US statistics that I was reading a few days ago, 1/3 of the companies, which is about 12 million companies, requested for over $10,000 capital last year just in the United States. And that's a lot of requests. I mean, from small businesses, from startups, from different type of businesses looking for money. And then this is not going to get better. This is going to get worse as we kind of move into digital, digitalization, and then we are going to expect worse scenarios, and a lot of vestible kind of investable companies that are ready to receive money. They're qualified, but again, because of the low bandwidth and the very traditional and manual process that has been in place for maybe 50, 60, 70 years within the industry is very tough. And we are hoping PeachScore can play an important, a major role on this to help the investors and entrepreneurs, either as a POCs, is a kind of investment, strategy partnerships to move much faster.
Got it. Yeah. And so what I found very interesting about this solution is that it's really a way to be able to calculate or automate the calculation of how prepared a startup is for funding, right? So tell me a little bit kind of like how you pull in all that information. And it definitely seems like the big problem is this idea of bandwidth, right? Like investors have to look through so many pitch decks and then they have to go dig deeper, and they don't necessarily have a lot of that information about each startup that they need. So there's a back and forth. So tell me a little bit how you kind of automate that. Like, what does the tool actually do? If I'm a startup and I go to your platform, how does the process work?
So very good question. So the way that it works, and it's gonna work in the next, like in our, because we are working to to make it better, and on both on investor side and startups. Basically, we are creating your profile, and then through like ingesting data from the internet all over the place, and then or you can create your own company on the platform as a kind of self-service platform, and then we design a system. We put tons of automation and verification in place, and then and we are in conversation to get a lot of kind of partnerships in place with the major players in the market, from banks to the insurance companies to accelerator programs, data providers, we call them data providers, to build your profile. So that being said, it's coming from the public sources, from the partnerships, from the data providers, or it comes from you, because you as a startup, you own that account. And in respect to your privacy, you can just take your account to private. So as you are adding more information to your profile through the kind of automation, or you added yourself as a founder, you have full 100% control on your own profile. So this is how it works. But again, to give you an example, like right now we are closing our second round, which is almost done. There's a lot of questions, because the first part of your question was what metrics, how many metrics. There's a lot of metrics that there are gray areas. We cannot judge those, because I can't tell you how your problem is good or bad, or you rank your solution, right? This is very subjective. So we are not going to get into subjective. Like if you want to go to your bank and say, if you want to lease a new car, they don't ask a question, and you don't write any essays for them. They check metrics, and those metrics are they can quantify those metrics. And that being said, like I can confirm, and the system can confirm that you're full-time versus part-time, or you are serial entrepreneur or first-time entrepreneur. What was your educational background? What is your working experiences? Who owns the company? What percentage owns by the founder versus investors? These are the type of metrics that if you put 100 investors in the room, everyone agrees on these metrics. They would like to see full-time commitment from you if you want to raise money from them. They want to see that you are, between the co-founders, there's a right combination. Someone focusing on business, maybe someone else taking care of the technology. And these are the things that are already established and is a proven models. I mean, we are not defining this today, and we kind of build the system out of like 50 to 70 years common experiences that have been in the market and proven, which is right. Not proven is wrong, because there's a lot of metrics in place that maybe I don't agree with them, or the industry doesn't agree, but we can change that. Those are very subjective. So basically those 400 different metrics goes to those factors that the engine and everyone, either entrepreneurs or investors, anyone interested parties agree on. And that's how we kind of, evaluating the companies. And it's kind of acting as a self-education tool. Like, look at how YouTube changed the industry. Like, if I want to paint my house, the first source is YouTube. I'm going to go in there and see how I can paint my room. If I want to learn how to fix my plumbing in my house, I go to YouTube to learn how I can make that happen. So there's a lot of self-education that happens already in the industry, especially the user attention span is very low. We don't have time. Everyone can be expert themselves. However, another reason we started PeachScore and we thought there's a gap in this market, there's no self-education for entrepreneurs. What are the options today? You can go to accelerator programs. How many companies can get to accelerator programs? We're talking about tens of thousands innovations, entrepreneurs, and new ideas. And less than 3% can get a chance to get accelerator programs. And especially if you live overseas, if you live, outside the band, like the places that not typically you can find a lot of programs, then how you can educate yourself outside the hubs, right? Maybe you are in emerging hubs or mature hubs. What about freshing hubs, like new fresh hubs, or maybe in future can be another, a potential hubs. So right now we disconnect. You say, okay, either you get a visa and come to US or travel and spend dollar sign, and that was where we came from. That say, okay, now we want to democratize the self-education in entrepreneurship for everyone. It doesn't matter where you live and what you do, as long as you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to try to be an entrepreneur, and if you want to see how the companies building their companies with what type of metrics in, let's say like Silicon Valley or Silicon Beach or New York or some already places that are kind of well known in entrepreneurship. This is a tool. You can do the self-education, and then you can, play with the numbers, with the metrics, and try to find how you can make it improve that.
Yeah. I love that, because I think that like one of the things that really impressed me, and you really mentioned it, right? You put 100 venture capital investors in the same room. There's a consensus around what these people are looking for, and depending a little bit, right, on which stages they're investing in companies. But essentially, there's really certain things that people all kind of agree on, and we constantly go to these events about like getting information at these events about what do investors want. There's probably 1,000 events online giving you sometimes great information, sometimes bad information, but we're having these events over and over and over. And so this idea that with PeachScore, you can go up there, you can create your profile, and you can basically figure out where you stand with investors, what parts of your business you have to work on. Is it the team? Do I need to find an additional teammate who covers this aspect? Do I need to focus more on the growth aspect right now? Am I too early stage? And I think that really is going to be a game changer, because suddenly it's going to allow people who are not yet ready to, first of all, not waste too much time down that road, understand that they need to now refocus on their business, which parts of the business to refocus on. And then if they want to raise funds later, they can come back to your solution and essentially plug in the numbers again and see where they stand. And for the other side, which are the investors, it's this idea of like, hey, if we could just look at really look deeper into the companies and take more time on the deals that are closer to where we're looking at those startups for, then everyone's really not wasting their time anymore. And founders can focus on the areas of their business that really require the most work, and funders can focus on really going deeper on the companies that are already showing the right metrics. Not necessarily just going towards founders who are really good at talking, or who are the loudest, or who know the best people. And I think that's really magical in the entire thing. So maybe could you highlight, just for the people listening, like what are some of the, you said we put in 100 VCs in one room. What would you say the top 3 or 4 things that they're looking for are, right?
Of course, if you are, it depends. If you are like pre-seed, seed versus Series A versus Series B, definitely you're going to have different people in the room, and then the expectations are different. But let's say for early stage companies, someone in pre-seed or seed round,
which is like what, 250,000 to 750,000? Yes,
right. Very, very kind of a small, like friends and family or savvy angel investors that you want to raise, or even accelerator programs. They look into your team. So that's the key on top, and that means your founding team and your core team, because they want to see that they are right founders. I've seen sometimes, the companies that come with like 5-6 founders, they have zero, and then they have like, I say, what are the responsibilities in the team? They say, oh, we have chief revenue officer, we have chief operating officer, we have chief XYZ check, and then you see this, look, they just line up the titles. And my immediate question, you don't have any revenue. What do you manage as a chief revenue officer? Oh, I'm doing the projection. Oh, that's the CEO's job in the early stage. And what is your chief operating officer means? I'm doing the operation. What does the operation mean? You don't have any employees. So again, I'm not trying to criticize these kind of like use cases, but I'm trying to say that investors looking into all these metrics as the earliest, because they know your idea might change. They know that you're gonna have ups and downs. They know that you might have pivot, but they're looking for strong teams that they can support each other. Like seeing the company that there are three co-founders, CEO, president, and chief marketing officer. I said, who's the CTO? You are claiming that I'm a technology company. And then what is the role of your president? I mean, it's basically people are doing the same thing in the company, which typically I think based on my experience, investors don't like to see in the earliest stage, same founders doing, of course, we have to cover as a co-founders always each other. We have multiple different hats. But again, I think the combination of the team, their role in the company, and how they can prove that they can execute either on the as a like, part of the leadership, and then how you can convince others to join your vision, your product, and share the same vision with you to build the future of this company. So I think this combination of all these things, back to your question, team is the most important part. And then I can give you probably many other metrics. Yes, your problem, your solution, how your market is big. Because if you tell investors, and if investors see that you are gonna just in best case target like 5,000 people, and then your potential for next 5 years is gonna be very low. The question is, maybe this is very small market and is not kind of maybe they might not be interested to put money in your company. So I think team and founding team is the most important part. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, and there's that misunderstanding, right? Like founders think like, oh, why are these, these investors being mean? They don't want to give me money. And it's like, no, like you just might not have the kind of business that they're looking to invest in. Because I think that what they forget is that, like, as a founder, as a funder, as a VC firm, you also have investors who you've promised a certain return towards, right? And so it's not about being mean. It's just, a $10 million company is not necessarily the type of company that you're looking for, right? Because it's not going to give you the kind of return on investment that is required for you to be able to get your LPs, the limited partners or the investors of the investors, to get what they were looking for and what they invested in. So I think there is this like misunderstanding where it's kind of like us versus them, and it's like, no, we're all together. And maybe there are different sources of funding, as you mentioned earlier. There are angel investors, there are venture capitalists. There's a lot of different sort of alternative funding mechanisms, and oftentimes it just seems like people are criticizing, and it's not like that. And I think it's important for us to make that clear. So my next question for you is, you really have all of these different hats, right? You've literally been the guy writing out every line of code. You've been the guy as the entrepreneur founder in the seat. You've been the person reviewing all the decks of these founders, training founders, investing in founders. And now you're back at this level at which you're back in the seat of the entrepreneur as the CEO of PeachScore. What kind of advice do you have for people who are looking to kind of get into this game? Like, what would you, do you have pieces of wisdom that you like tell people when you go and do presentations in front of these very, very large groups of people?
Oh, that's a very hard question. Easy to answer, but I'm trying to see how I can give you the best answer. But let me just give you on top of my head some
no pressure. We're not trying to I'm not asking you to give the wisdom that will unlock the truth of the world. I mean, just some thoughts around it, like what are some of the things that you've learned over the years, and then I'd like to talk after this about how things have matured over the past 20 years.
So I think you have, first of all, I think entrepreneurship is amazing, but might not be a fit for everyone. I'm not saying no one, everyone, of course, everyone has a passion, definitely try it. But it doesn't mean that don't expect in over a few months you become millionaires. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs, they say, oh, I'm going to put 3 months for myself. I'm going to start this company to see if I can get like to XYZ, and then I'm gonna just either leave my job and then dedicate my life. You have to love to be an entrepreneur. This is kind of, if you want to be pilot, you need to love to be pilot on a sky every day, maybe hours on a sky. If you want to be doctor, I'm not the type of person to be doctor. I mean, because if I see blood, I'm gonna just pass. So I'm not, even if they give me like $10 million tomorrow for a month, I can't do it. I can't. So I think the point that I want to mention here is that you have to be patient. If you want to start entrepreneur, you need passion. You need to be patient. You need to be consistent. You need to be persistent, and more important, you need to practice that. I mean, practice means confidence. Practice and confidence, right? So these are kind of complementary. And how you can increase your confidence? Practice. Go to gym, do exercise, because that increases your confidence. And then being an entrepreneur, I mean, especially for first-time entrepreneurs, they might not have confidence. Even myself, I didn't have confidence. I mean, I can't judge the rest, but I didn't have confidence for the first time. I couldn't shy even talk. And then you have to do it more often, and you have to be at the level that you kind of be out there. I think out of box is great, but again, you need all these elements in place. And then that's my suggestion. If you can be persistent, consistent, if you can be patient enough, because you're building a company. Sometimes I've seen early stage companies like entrepreneurs, they're building the companies to keep the potential investor happy. Don't make and build your company because you want to hit some milestones to keep the investors happy. Build your company as it was supposed to be and successful. Even build it, I know it's hard, and generate revenue even without any fund. Can you do it? Of course it's very hard, but it's possible. A startup means starting a new business. Startup is a kind of maybe a different word, but startup means you start a business. Maybe my brother-in-law has a kind of now is in perfume and cologne wholesale business, and he started like 5, 6, 7 years ago, and he's doing really good, and he's making a lot of money. I know that he owns as a small business, so he's a business owner. But the way that he built the company now is, he doesn't need any investor. Of course, he gained, like he scaled very slow, because this is kind of against of the entrepreneurship or investors' expectations. You have to grow very fast, and that's what everyone's looking for. But again, look at it that you are building a business and build it right. I've seen that sometimes you keep changing because you want to keep the potential investor X happy to give you like, I don't know, $20 or $200,000. And you don't know that even if that happens or not. You build a company, the money comes, the traction comes, everyone comes after you. But if you chase the money, you cannot. And then don't chase the money. Let money work for you. You don't work for money.
I love that. And I always tell founders, listen to the risk scenario. If you build a company and you don't find investors, you still have a company. If you try to, you spend all your time building pitch decks and trying to get meetings with investors and just try to raise money, if you fail with that, you don't have a business or investors, and that's it, So I think that's such a powerful message. Also, I just want to repeat what you said earlier. Practice builds confidence. And that basically the more that you invest in your own growth, the more that you start being able to feel more confident as an entrepreneur. And I love the parallel with the doctor, right? Like, you never have no doctor wakes up, he's like, oh, I want to be a doctor, and then he goes straight to the operating room. No, it takes years of practice. And I think that's a real big misunderstanding in entrepreneurship, that you just wake up and you're an entrepreneur. It's like, no, the people who succeed and seem like an overnight success, they put in years of work. They put in a lot of sweat. But I think that there's an overglorification of this idea of the 20-year-old whiz kid who sold his startup for $1 billion with 10 employees without any revenue. And that's what the narrative that the news loves, right? But I think that I love you saying this, because what it says. And so are you a believer that entrepreneurship is a learned skill, or do you believe that people are just born entrepreneurs? This is like always a topic that I find so like, and for me personally, I think both. I think that the skills can all be learned. I think that the mindset can be developed as well. I think that that there are some people though that are born with more. They're more wanting to take risk. You have some people who love extreme sports since a very young age. For example, you have other people who are more introverted, extroverted. I actually heard a really interesting quote from a top like coach who said, "Look at all the billionaires. They're all introverts." I was like, "Oh wow." Elon Musk, yeah, kind of introvert. So there's also so yeah. Give me your thoughts on that. Like, is it a learned skill? Is it a?
I think it's a combination of that. It's very hard to just say, oh no, it's only number option A or option B. The reason is why there are tons of programs out there. There are accelerator programs. There's incubators. There are non-profit organizations. There are entrepreneurship centers. Why they existed? Because they can teach you something. Because you can join them, you can learn, you can work with them. They have a lot of experiences, and they can prevent you to make the same common mistakes that the tens of thousands of entrepreneurs have done this before. Why you onboard advisors? Why you have mentorships? Like, these are the things that because of the need this happened like that. That's why people believe that. Of course, first-time entrepreneurs always have chance. Everyone has all of us or anyone, like even Mark Zuckerberg was first entrepreneur to build a Facebook back then. But again, if you're a serial entrepreneur, you have done this multiple times. That means you have more experience. That means there's no guarantee. Still I can't say 100% because he had 2 exits before. He's gonna be successful in the 3rd company. But as a serial entrepreneur, he can make minimum mistakes that typically the first-time entrepreneurs might do, and definitely education is a part of entrepreneurship. You have to educate yourself. It's very interesting because every day we receive emails from entrepreneurs and say, guys, what is 409A valuation? Do I need that? And a lot of people don't know even these terms. And no one expecting them to know that until the lawyers come back and say, oh yes, if you want to issue the shares, then if you want to get on board advisors, then you need a 409 evaluation, and blah, blah, blah. Yada, yada, yada. So the point is that a lot of things we can teach them faster, mentor, and then if much faster they can learn, faster they can focus on what it matters to build a company, right? I think that's the kind of something that I've seen. There was a lot of conversations on LinkedIn that they say you can't teach entrepreneurship. I disagree with that. Definitely you can teach entrepreneurship, but again, if you're born genius, that's extra bonus for you, good for you. But again, we can't say, okay, because one out of 10,000 people born genius, or maybe then let's use that case to model for the entire ecosystem, which I think that we should just forget about exceptions and see what is 99% of the market. We can definitely education. Otherwise, if the education doesn't matter, why do we have schools? Let's from tomorrow close all these schools and universities, and we can learn everything at home, right? So no, I think definitely, long story short, I think entrepreneurship can, but again, it's a combination of that. Some metrics you have to experience yourself. Sometimes there's a challenge that's personal and customized for you based on the product, solution, location, and maybe other factors that might affect your results. You have to experience, and you have to be a little bit lucky and make the right decisions over these steps. And no one can teach you. Honestly, you have to explain yourself. But a lot of things can teach. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, I love that. I think a related quote is a related quote that I really like is hustle beats talent if talent doesn't hustle. And I find that really interesting because you can be born, and that really comes back to Carol Dweck growth mindset kind of stuff, where it's hey, someone who's very talented but never practices over time is going to become less good than someone who has less talent but practices all the time. And I think that's kind of my mentality. You're born with the cards that you're born with, but there are so many examples of people just kind of completely trumping the cards they were given, even though those do give you an advantage to begin with. So no, I really love that. And actually, you mentioned a really good point, accelerators, they only accept between 1% and 3% of people. It's actually the reason why I started We Are No Code. It was like, hey, there's ways to teach these hard skills and to get people prepared for these programs to increase their chances, because people aren't doing that work, right? There are all these no-code tools that you can leverage even if you're not technical. There's all these methodologies developed in Silicon Valley for the past 50 years. We just need to make these actionable. And so that was really our goal with our company. But I think, as you said, every founder is going to face a different problem at a different time based on his own experience, maybe his own personal limitations. Like if you have a lot of, like, let's say, anxiety, overcoming your anxiety might be one of the big things that you have to do as you jump into the unknown of entrepreneurship. So I think it's really interesting. And at each phase, those problems become very different, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
I love that,
Let me
Alex.
give you an example. What we did at PeachScore, what we did a lot of survey for sure. I mean, a lot of Q&A with entrepreneurs, different entrepreneurs from different schools. And I mentioned in one of my comments on LinkedIn a few days ago. But again, what we did, we kind of started to interview like a few hundred entrepreneurs from Stanford. That was our kind of one of our use cases. And by default, they know a lot of things that typically maybe some other schools that we did, because we ran the same test with different schools. And then we compared the results and see why the score of some like Stanford students are much higher. Let's not be biased, because if I want to just judgmental and say, oh, because the Stanford rank in the world is 1 or 2 or 3. No, let's forget about that part. Let's see why their entrepreneurs are stronger by default compared to other, some other schools. I don't want to bring the name, but again, just we compare that results. And then what we did, we interviewed few investors that are just invested on Stanford University and sitting around that school, and we just observe and talk. And then what it was very interesting, what we got that was a lot of the entrepreneurs at Stanford. First of all, Stanford has been in the entrepreneurship center for many years around, right? And then they had a chance to go ask questions. They had a lot of classes. And then when they sit by default in the class, there are all entrepreneurs around them. Someone building a fashion company, someone's a technology company, and they keep talking and they keep learning, right? So there was a funny kind of joke that sometimes when I speak with some of the investors in my friends in Silicon Valley, when you go to Silicon Valley, maybe shopping center or shopping mall, and you're waiting in a line to pay, maybe in front of you is Mark Zuckerberg, the guy is Jeff Bezos, or they're all investors, entrepreneurs, they're all tech savvy, because that's kind of the landscape. If you was maybe if you are in Los Angeles, maybe they're all artists. Someone is is working for movie industry. Maybe someone is a graphic designer. So I'm not saying, because the landscape is kind of is very important. Your region, what is built for, right? So that increases your chance. So if you are at Stanford University, you're sitting in the line, or even you want to just go and shopping, you deal with all entrepreneurs. You go here and there, and at your school, you see a lot of cases and you learn. Someone say, oh, someone talk about 498 valuation. What does that mean? And then you keep learning. And it doesn't mean you're born, it's the environment. So that I think the environment is very important. That's why by default, when they start, it's very investors friendly, because they don't need to teach those Stanford students. I'm not saying 100%, but a lot of them already have the basic knowledge and information how to start the company, how to get a lawyer, how to get a default fee, how to register the company as a C Corp developer. So they have done a lot of, they have seen so much, and then the environment helped them to, as a leverage. I'm not saying, but rest, do more education, you can keep up with the same thing. I mean, it doesn't mean because you are not study at Stanford University, then you have to should be entrepreneur. That's not the case. But the point is that more educational platforms, more access to information, more we democratize the access to information, more entrepreneurs and more successful entrepreneurs we have, from other regions. I mean, nothing is exclusive for one region. That's what I'm trying to say.
I love that. Yeah, and I think it's kind of like. Also learning how to take all that information, because information's out there, but the problem is taking that information and being able to take action with that information, I think. And then you're learning a lot through action. That's something that we're very bullish about. Um, Excellent. So tell me a little bit briefly how you've seen this entire ecosystem of startups sort of mature over the past, 10, 15, 20 years.
Are you talking about different hubs, or are you talking in general about the industry changes?
I mean, the industry, right? Like we've noticed that basically like, investors are investing now larger rounds in more mature companies, for example. That's the trend, right? You have to, before you could raise, 15 years ago, you could raise money with just a pitch deck. Now you kind of need some revenue to be able to, traction or revenue. What are some other trends that you've kind of noticed that you think entrepreneurs should be aware of? In kind of going out there these days, because a lot of people we see the news, we see the headlines, but we don't necessarily understand what's being said behind closed doors.
I think what pandemic changed so far. I mean, a lot of people believe that many things changed, which is right. But I think what changed in entrepreneurship was that for the first time, when I was at Plug and Play, we met with a lot of corporations. I had to meet with a lot of like Amazon team, with AMC Networks team, with Dentsu team, with USPS Washington, to talk about partnership and how we can start, as a collaborate, as a kind of open innovation platform. It was funny when I think about those moments. I never thought that I can just have a Zoom call with them. Always we took a call, or I had to go to the events in person, meet with those people, which is still important because we are human. We want to socialize with other people. It's very important. When you see someone, it adds a new dimension to your conversation. That is a kind of 3D versus 2D. So that's like, we can change it. That's totally is gonna stay as it is as long as human lives. But again, what I've seen a lot of shifts in the focuses. Like now, I believe the companies that are coming out from pandemic in 4-5 years is going to build the next unicorns in our industry, because a lot of companies, even good companies, unfortunately, have seen that they couldn't survive. Some of them because the pandemic caused they couldn't close the round, or is not focused anymore. Now investors are willing to put money on some like different focus areas that is solving a problem from today's community, from society. Either it's food, either it's biotech, is there like maybe is another Zoom with much better performance or enhancement, I don't with more features. But again, I think what I've seen a shift moving to the area to see this. It was not an opportunity before, now it's an opportunity because of the pandemic. And let's forget about pandemic for a moment. Like if I give you an example, if you look at the last like 50 years, like 70 years, we had internet came, right? Then there was a lot of companies try to use internet to build AI, but the AI, the hardware was not there. The hardware was very kind of basic hardware with the low processors, bandwidth, and RAMs, that it was not easy to build an intelligent agent on top of those hardware. Now the hardware kept up, and now every day you hear that there's more new technology that can handle more data. Now you heard about, now everyone knows about Tesla. Now the Tesla challenge was communicating with the smart cars, right? And that means very high, you need the processor to make those decisions on the fly, because it's kind of, if the car doesn't understand, it's the human lives, right? You have accidents and you have a lot of casualties. So now if you look at the internet, and then it started with hardware, and now because of hardware, now the potential untapped market on AI can just build an amazing technologies to help human, right? On either in different industries. Like look at, and then because of the internet now, we have enough data to call it big data, right? So we transfer all the, because when there was no data back then, and then everything was kind of a piece of the papers. Now everyone, companies is mostly digitize all their assets. Now the internet and billions of people are generating content daily basis on the internet. Now big data means big data, and big data needs for AI. So that means AI now has hardware, has talents, which is entrepreneurs, and then it has enough data to process and help the intelligence system to learn on machine learning, supervised machine learning. So that being said, now we have pandemic. That means that AI can be, help and serve for biotech, right? Biotechnology. Look at the vaccines. I mean, for the first time for the human history, that was different type of vaccines that was not traditionally produced by the corporations. Now, thanks to all these landscapes, the potential for everyone in biotech, in agriculture, in education, in supply and chain, to see how they can just leverage all these new technologies and this kind of changes to come up with the new innovative solutions that can help help companies, the industries, society, everyone, right?
I love that. Yeah. And that's what we're ultimately trying to do with innovation, right? It's to better things, right? That's what's always been kind of a challenge, is to try to really face these big issues that are happening and to solve them. No, this was so cool. I really appreciate you coming. Before you head out, can you tell people where they can find you, where they can check out PeachScore? And then I have a last question for you.
Of course. Anyone can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm all the time trying to be active. I might be slow for a few days to respond because now we have a deadline to meet. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not an investor anymore. But again, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and then definitely I would love to talk to anyone who's interested to learn more about PeachScore. And then if they want to join PeachScore, we have a small team, like 20 people, 21 people in our team. We are trying to onboard more users, but because now we're kind of trying to fix a lot of issues on the platform, and then trying to onboard users so we can serve, and we can service, we can go on the call to fix their issues. It's gonna be, they can add their names on waiting list, and then we can onboard them, and then definitely when it's public in a few months, it's a self-service platform. They don't need me anymore to contact us. But again, happy to have a conversation if there's any.
Awesome. Well, that's very generous of you, Alex. I know that you are a super busy man. And so now my last question, which is a little bit of an existential question and probably very loaded as well. Like, what is the kind of influence that you would like to have in your professional career?
I think to me the prophets are the greatest entrepreneurs in human history, because they convince everyone to follow them, and they change everything, right, for many millions of people. I'm not a prophet. I'm not a god. I'm a normal, like, fellow entrepreneur like yourself. But what I'm trying to do on my end as my role, I'm trying to help other community, the other part of the community. I mean, we are all different part of the body, and we have to help each other to build the next generation of innovations, next generation of entrepreneurs. And I think I would love, before I in this life, at least I can do something so people can remember my name as a good name, that I helped them. And my passion always is to help in my passion, I'm not a doctor again, so my passion is to help my fellow entrepreneurs, help the industry, investors, angel investors, to fundamentally kind of hopefully changes and improve and enhance in future.
And I've seen you directly do that in the LA ecosystem, and I know that you're up to really big things. So again, I wanted to thank you so much for joining the show. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. For everyone who has not followed him on LinkedIn, go immediately slam on that follow button. He constantly has amazing posts with lots of wisdom, and he's an open guy who puts on loads of events. Also, a little shout out to Moonshot House, which is a community that he has also built. Again, you will be hearing a lot more from Alex over the next couple of years. Alex, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon.